And welcome back to A Strong Recommend, the podcast where you waste your time talking about us, you know, because we're important. I messed up. Never mind.
I don't I don't know, maybe the audience talks about us. I don't think that's what you meant, but it could be true and that'd be
No,
cool.
no. If they talk about us, that'd be great. Restart.
I'm keeping this. That was classic.
No, oh, it's so good.
We've never figured
That's
out
a
a good start
blooper.
anyway. It doesn't even
That's a
matter.
good blooper. What I was going to say was it's the show where you watch us talk about stuff that you should waste your time on, but you waste your time watching us instead.
Unless you listen to it on a podcast app and then you don't watch us talk about
But
it.
you're still wasting your time.
This is getting worse, but hopefully it'll have a decent middle and end, unlike this movie. Hey, good transition.
We're skipping the usual hey, we did something, this is why you should check it out. We're just gonna go straight into the movie.
Yeah, no prior
which
discussion,
is
just right into the movie. And very small change to the formatting.
Mhm.
We realized it didn't make a lot of sense to rank whether our spoiler discussion was a strong recommend or not after the spoiler discussion, because that assumes you've already watched it. So what do you care?
Right.
Not that anyone's actually determining their movie watching habits based on us, but because it makes a little bit more sense, we're going to ask the question first for now on and go from there. So, having already given our answers, or at least mine, Alex, is this a strong recommend?
I recommend it if you watched the first two. Closure.
That's a way to word it. Officially no, in that it's a bad movie. If you're already 2/3 of the way there, then
You
yeah,
might
why
as
not?
well.
And technically
Yeah.
it could end up being relevant to the
Mhm.
MCU, given the rumors about where that's going that may or may not have been answered by the time we post this episode. But yeah, technically you should if you're already 2/3 of the way there. But not a strong recommend, in that it is a bad movie. Why is it a bad movie?
Um
Sam Raimi didn't
well,
want to make this movie.
oh really? I didn't know that.
I don't know if you know this, but it's not that he was done with Spider-Man. It's not that he didn't want to make more. But we've talked before about how Sam Raimi is a bit of an old school Spider-Man fan, and you have to view these
Mhm.
through that lens, that even though they took place in what was current times when they were made, he was really adapting 60s comics. And point is, Sam Raimi doesn't care about Venom. Sam Raimi wanted nothing to do with Venom. That's not his Spider-Man. Venom comes from, I'm thinking, the early 90s, maybe late 80s. I don't remember for sure, but it's around that time
Mhm.
period. People watching the 90s animated series really knew him from, being on that show. Or like there was a classic comic book arc called Maximum Carnage that got a video game adaptation, so people saw the symbiotes there. So the studios really wanted to do Venom because he was really well known from things like that.
Mhm.
Raimi wanted nothing to do with it. They made him do it. And boy, does it show that this is the work of somebody that hates Venom and needs to do it.
Yikes. I didn't know that actually. It does put a lot into perspective now that you mention it. Although I do have to say, I don't hate the way Venom looks in this movie.
It looks fine. It's done visually.
Yeah.
Done
It's
well
done
visually.
visually well.
A lot of things are. But since we've mentioned Venom, I guess let's go into uh castings first.
I'm actually interested in doing this.
Actually, first,
The castings first.
is there anything worthy to note about the characters that have already been around before
Yes.
the new additions?
In my opinion, yes.
Okay.
For one, Kirsten Dunst, who plays Mary Jane, actually gets better in this movie.
Yes, this is her
I
best rendition of the character,
Yeah,
for sure.
I believe it in this one.
Either she figured it out here or Sam Raimi figured it out here. Somebody figured it out, and she's decent here where she really wasn't before.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. Uh, Tobey Maguire gets more comfortable playing
Mhm.
Spider-Man. I'm talking like just Spider-Man, not black suit Spider-Man.
He's ignoring the Peter Darker segments
You stole
that
my joke.
that probably weren't his decision. Ignoring those, I'd say he's more comfortable as an actor here. They didn't necessarily do
Mm,
a more accurate Spider-Man
yeah.
because they wanted this movie to be dark. They didn't really pull that off, but they wanted it to be dark. So we still don't have that quippy kind of Spider-Man I've complained was missing here, but
Yeah.
just as an actor in general, he's more comfortable and believable here.
Yeah, absolutely. Uh James Franco is Harry Osborn. Um
He was asked to do something different here, given that he's a
absolutely.
villain now.
Yeah. I hmm I believe it a little more, the villain.
Hmm.
Cuz it's not just like the second movie where he's like, "Ugh, thanks Obama, but thanks Spider-Man instead." You know what I mean?
I
He's
feel
not blaming
like
everything on Spider-Man. It's more he's directed and focused. Like
mhm,
he like instead of bitching about it, just do it. You know what I
yeah.
mean? Like
Um
that's what I like about the direction in this character.
he's pretty proactive here. I would argue he's the main villain of the three. I like that the trilogy like set this up. Like at one point during their first fight, he says something like, "You knew this was coming, Peter," and like, yeah,
Yeah.
we did because the movies did a decent job setting it up. Um, they didn't do a decent job in that. I said to my wife, do you think they realize that we never got to see these two be friends? They just told us they are, and we've just had to believe that this whole time.
I did not think about that.
And so, like, they did set it up in that this is, you know, set up from prior movies, and that this is a build up starting with an arc from the first one. But I'm still not invested in their friendship because I never got to see them be friends.
Right. You're told like for example when uh Harry gets out of the hospital and Peter gives him his old basketball that he just did like he did with Andy and Woody,
Hmm.
right Andy on his shoe. He wrote Parker on the basketball. Um yeah,
Yeah.
you're just kind of told that they have a friendship and you're not really there to see it.
Hmm.
Um I completely forgot. There's one more character I wanted to talk about.
Wait, I'm not done there because as for his
Go for
performance
it.
himself, rather than the character, because we technically said we were doing casting, we're doing both at the same time. Whatever.
Mhm.
Uh, the approach to the character was fine. As for his acting, I think it's mixed results. I think there's lines where I believe him and ones where I don't, and it makes me wonder if it's like he had the potential if he was given enough shots, but there were times where maybe he just really need a couple more takes and they couldn't give it to him.
I believe that. I believe that. Um, the character I wanted to talk about was Bruce Campbell's third reprisal of the movie, where he's now the waiter at the fancy
Hmm.
restaurant.
Yeah.
So we first see this man be a wrestling announcer,
Hmm.
upgraded to a
But
theater marquee guy,
yeah.
and then he must have taken sabbatical in France, lived there for a few years. Because I'm assuming these movies take a few years apart between two and three. I don't know if they're
It,
going by like real world event time, like
hmm
because this movie was what 20 was it 20
2007.
was it really 2007?
2007, so 5 years after the first.
So 5 years after the first. So between the second and third movie, it's 3 years. So he must have lived
Hmm.
in France for 3 years and
I've
learned.
I've seen people joke, maybe they were joking, maybe they were honestly
Mhm.
speculating, but uh, I've seen people joke that like they were setting him up to be a villain in the fourth movie in the same way that like we kept seeing Kurt Connors, the college
Professor.
professor with the missing arm, who they do
Yeah.
use in the Amazing Spider-Man still.
Who actually
Uh,
has both arms in all the movies, doesn't he?
no, I actually noticed. You mentioned it when we talked about the first movie that he was there, and I totally blanked out, didn't notice it was him, and I went, "Oh yeah, he is in these movies." And then in the second one and this one, I actually noticed, "Oh, he's missing the arm," and they just don't say anything about it. They just call him Dr. Connors and show the missing arm, and they don't like zoom in on it. They don't frame on it. They don't
They
focus
don't
on it.
point
They
it.
just
Yeah.
want comic book fans to notice.
Gotcha.
And that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that is pretty cool.
Another instance of them actually bothering to kind of build things up from the beginning, even though they didn't really know they were going to be able to franchise it. Who were we talking about? Oh, Bruce Campbell.
Bruce Campbell, and then we got on a rant about Dr. Connors. Something that I kind of noticed in the end that I don't know, since we're still kind of talking about cast.
Sure.
Did you notice at the ending of the movie during the funeral that Flash Thompson was there?
Oh no, I didn't.
Yeah, he was standing beside Mary Jane. He was walking towards the burial scene.
Oh, that's cool to like kind of like bring
Mhm.
back some of the high school characters, and I guess that helps add some, I don't know about world building, but like I don't know, continuity, I guess, that they would
Yeah.
still know some of the people they knew in high school. That's cool.
Which, if I'm not mistaken, doesn't Flash become a villain? Doesn't he become Venom?
Yeah, we had this discussion last time.
No, I know we did in the first movie, but I was just making sure I remembered what we said correctly.
He becomes a Venom. He is a person who wields the Venom suit at some
Yeah.
points in time.
Well, the reason that I really wanted to point him out being in the movie again was because it was like oh hey, if you're a comic book fan, you know that Flash was Venom.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't unintentional that they brought him specifically back for 5 seconds in the movie for someone to notice.
Oh, yeah. Well, and it could have been, as opposed to just any random high school friends, it could have been that they
Hmm.
wanted to do more with him and Venom later on if this franchise kept happening. Although when this movie was made, I don't actually remember if it was true at the time that he would
Hmm.
become a Venom. I don't remember when they started doing that and if it happened
Okay.
before or after this movie.
Gotcha.
I think that's all that's worth noting for like returning actors, and if there was any difference, I guess the other new additions would be. Oh no, I didn't even look up the actor's name. Whoever's playing Sandman. I'm sorry.
Google it. Google it. I'll talk about how I feel about Sandman.
Yeah, go ahead, talk about the character and performance anyway.
Uh, he the guy that plays Sandman. I hope you're editing in post every time we say the guy that plays Sandman, just his name, like in front of our face. Um, but he was given like a very dark role.
Thomas Hayden Church.
Okay. So Thomas, I'm guessing Hayden's his middle name.
Yeah.
Okay. His initials are THC. Got it. Uh,
He's been hearing that his entire life, I assure you.
guaranteed. Um, he's got a very dry sense of the character, which is also funny because he's made of sand. But I do like his character in the regards that he plays a really the road to hell is paved with good intentions role, and he does it really well because like you can see like he just looks permanently tired and depressed, like in every scene, including the fights.
He gets the emotion they want him to get, but it is like one emotion the entire time.
Yeah.
They don't ask him to do much.
No, they don't. Even when he's the giant Sandman monster, he looks depressed. Like, I don't know if you caught that, but he just looks sad. I do have to say, I'll save visuals for later. Never mind.
Yeah, let's hold off on
that. And who's the other guy? Eddie Brock Jr.
So Topher Grace.
Topher Grace. Okay.
He does not resemble comic book Eddie Brock. in terms of looks or like behavior.
Mhm.
But if the idea was to make him a mirror to Peter Parker because he was going to wear the Venom symbiote, I'm okay with that. That's a bit controversial
Okay.
because
Okay.
uh people don't like him in the role. People make jokes about it and how dumb of a move that was because he's I don't know, not great, whether that's him as an actor or what they asked him to do with the character, and because he doesn't really fit the comic book character at all. But with the idea being to mirror Peter Parker, like if the idea was pick an actor that if we didn't already have
Mhm.
Tobey Maguire could have played Spider-Man, okay.
Okay, yeah, that's I'll give you that.
I don't mind that
Um,
approach.
I I don't like how he became Venom
Hmm.
because it was just stupid. Like, oh no, he caught me being a cheat at my job. I got fired. Dear Lord, kill Peter Parker.
He's
You,
like
you know what I
yelling at
mean?
Peter and going, "Do you remember what you did to me? How you embarrassed me?" And I kept yelling at the TV, "You did that!
Yeah, you
You
made a joke out of
embarrassed you!"
yourself. Yeah, like it's about as bad as the first Dragon Ball Z Broly movie, and the only reason that Broly hates Goku is because he wouldn't stop crying beside him when they were babies.
Hmm.
Like it's that kind of thing. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like it's there's no I mean granted you can't really have like a deep enriched history with a brand new villain in the final, movie, but like
So the character's not
you could have
written
focused on
well.
him more.
I think he does fine with what he's given, but they don't ask him to
Absolutely.
do good stuff. Venom himself, because you can kind of look at Venom and Eddie Brock here as two separate villains. Venom
Yeah.
himself, you don't understand Venom at the end of this movie.
No.
If you watched the animated series, you understand Venom and know who he is, but this movie did nothing to explain Venom to you. Uh,
Right.
it illustrated that it affects the personality of the wearer. That's kind of it.
Yeah.
And he did it in like the worst way possible. Just a full act of Peter Parker being the most cringe thing you've ever seen. Like, I was literally cringing in the sense that like I was drinking my coffee and started biting my coffee cup. I was like afraid I was going to cringe so hard I was going to break my teeth or the cup, whichever one's softer. It's absolutely unbearable and absolutely the work of somebody that hates Venom.
Yeah.
Who didn't want to be asked to make a fourth one even though they had been building to it.
Yeah, absolutely. Um I guess I'm just better at compartmentalization than you cuz like I'm sitting here I'm like, "Yep, it's bad. Bring it on. Just wash me in this wave of bad. Just do it." Like um I speaking of dude I think we've kind of we missed
Gwen
one other
Stacy.
character. Yeah, we
We
missed
missed
Gwen
Gwen
Stacy.
Stacy, Bryce Dallas Howard, who, when I last
Mhm.
saw this movie, I didn't know who she was, and now I do. And so I had a funny realization of like, oh, that is an actor that I know. Um, she's fine. She's not asked to do
What else is
much,
she
and
in?
Bryce Dallas Howard, a Jurassic World and a particular memorable episode of Black Mirror. I don't know if you've ever watched it.
I have not. I'm a terrible
Um,
person, I know.
she has a
Tell me in the comments.
pretty crazy, outstanding performance in a Black Mirror episode. She's fine here. She's not really asked to do much, and Gwen Stacy isn't so much Gwen Stacy as a plot point, and that's
Yeah.
there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with having a minor character, and if they just needed someone to be alternate love interest, not really love interest plot device, it's fine that they decided to go ahead and give it the name and appearance of a classic comic book character just because why not? So I don't have a problem with it, but there's nothing memorable or outstanding here, nothing bad either. It just happened.
Yeah, I can agree with that. Now, I know we talked about the actors themselves, I wouldn't mind going on to the characters at this point because I mean it's the final bit of the movie, or at
So
least like I really want to touch on Peter Parker
so
and
I
Peter
feel
Darker.
like we were kind of touching on both at the same time, but
Mhm.
having introduced all of these villains at the same time, which, by the way, James Franco's villain here is officially called New Goblin,
Or s-
not the Green Goblin, not
mm,
Hobgoblin, the New Goblin.
is it spelled NU
I
like new
I
metal?
I don't think so, but I think I would like that more. Um,
Yeah. Um.
with that said, introducing his kind of alternate personality, and Sandman and Eddie Brock and Venom all at the same time. It's not that any of these characters were done dirty. It's that in, I
Mhm.
think, 2 hours and 20 minutes, nothing was done with any of them.
Yeah, the only person that I think had some sort of like character development was Mary Jane, and that could
Hmm.
be because like the expression of, self-worth that she
Hmm.
had. And honestly, like I kind of like the scenes with her and talking about like her struggles and shit was actually more engaging than anything that like a lot of the characters had. Like,
Yeah.
the self-realization at the end with Harry Osborn realizing, "Oh, he didn't kill my dad. If I would have only just listened." You know what I mean? Like,
Is that a plot hole you were going to get to? You wanted to point out a plot hole, and I got one on that scene.
no, my plot hole was actually about Venom. But go ahead. I would love to hear your plot hole here.
First of all, that
Old
that
man?
was that was the butler, right? The old
Yeah.
man. First of all, why would he have not said that until right now? Second of all, he doesn't need to say that. The autopsy would have said that.
Yeah.
There is no
Um
having this realization 5 years later. The autopsy would have said he was killed by the Goblin Glider. And even then, that doesn't really tell you whether it was Spider Man's fault or not.
I was just about to say that. Because seriously, like think about it, like
But also,
there's a
Spider Man's been
scene.
consistently a good guy. You've seen the Green Goblin do evil things, so he knows his
Right.
dad was the Green Goblin. He knows he did bad things. He knows he's seen Spider-Man do good things. Isn't it a
Yeah.
given that this was his fault?
And not to mention, just because Green Goblin got stabbed by his own glider doesn't mean shit. Because think about it this way: there's, if you look at it as a foreshadowing in a way,
Mm-hmm.
when he fought Harry and threw the Green Goblin bomb at him,
Mm-hmm.
he webbed it and turned it back around on him. That's something that Spider-Man does a lot.
Mm.
So what makes you think that the Goblin didn't send the glider after him and fling it back at the
Yeah.
Goblin?
Yeah.
He was killed by the glider, but the context behind it doesn't say. There's no context, you know what I mean? If he would have said, I saw footage from the glider's
Mm-hmm.
cameras, that would have solved a lot of that. Aside from him being an information withholding dickhead.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. They didn't even need to go that far. They didn't even need to go as far as to say, "Oh, we know he was killed by a glider,"
Yeah.
and and acknowledge that we don't necessarily know that that means it was
Hmm.
Spider-Man's fault or not. They could still lean into, we've been watching Spider-Man save people for 5 years. We watched the
Right.
Green Goblin kill people. Like, this isn't up for speculation. If Spider-Man did it, it's because Green Goblin was trying to kill him.
Right.
So James Franco's Harry is just like the dumbest shit.
It's flawed from the get-go after the first
Hmm.
movie. Um I don't know. My other plot hole that my wife actually pointed out,
Okay.
if you want me to go into it.
Hmm.
Dr. Connors should know who Peter Parker is now. Venom's not dead because he still had part of the symbiote.
He has part of the Venom symbiote, but would he know that that has anything to do with Black Suit Spider-Man?
maybe not black suit Spider-Man, but well, no, he would have to know because it was everywhere that Spider-Man had the black suit. The black symbiote aside, once he's
But
seen
who?
Venom, like
Yeah,
Venom is Spider-Man incarnate in this movie.
but do people see Venom? Not a black suit, but Venom. Do people see Venom until the very end of the movie?
No, but still, the fact remains is that he still has the symbiote,
Yeah,
or at least a sample of it.
yeah, but he doesn't know that that's the black suit.
So you mean to
To
tell me that this
to the people in New York watching this go down in the news, in the papers, in TV footage and whatever, all they know is that Spider-Man's in a black suit now. They don't know that it's alive or organic or a symbiote.
Sure.
So Connors knows that he's in possession of a symbiote, and he knows that Spider-Man's wearing a black suit, but that's not enough of a connection. Now, if there was already footage of Spider-Man in the black suit, if there was already footage of the suit doing something organic, because it doesn't look like an organic material. It looks like a suit until it decides to be Venom. If people were already seeing the webs, he has enough to put it together. But I'm not sure that there's enough to put that together until the final act.
Well,
and they did want Curt Connors to be the villain of the fourth movie, so it could be that they wanted him to put that together.
Well, let's look at the facts here. Peter brings this to him.
Mm-hmm.
The symbiote tries to rush after Peter, and he even points out, this thing seems to like you.
Yeah.
Don't keep any of this. All of a sudden, Spider-Man has a black suit. Okay. Then we see Venom in the news. Hold on.
We see the black suit in the news.
You mean to tell me this man who is no longer Mr. Connors, who is Dr. Connors, cannot put two and two together to realize that they are the same thing? So why did Peter have this and not to mention,
if you think about that was enough to put it together without seeing any evidence that the black suit is an organic material, if that's enough to make the leap, and it could be, but if that's enough, we would also have to argue that in the scene where Peter beats up Flash in the first movie, everyone should have put it together, because there's enough information there without it being a given two.
Mary Jane figured out that Spider-Man was Peter Parker from a kiss. In the first movie.
Sure.
And she's not a scientist.
Yeah, but
not to mention all of the symbiote webs everywhere.
Don't know that the black suit is organic until the final fight.
Yeah. But no, listen. There's tons of symbiote web ooze, whatever it is. It's not even webs, it's just an extension of himself everywhere. So even though Venom at the end gets vaporized and he has that tiny bit of symbiote there, you mean to tell me they wouldn't talk to all the professors to analyze what this shit is?
There's still a leap to be made there, and it's a similarly big leap to us ignoring everyone not figuring it out from the high school fight.
Well, yeah, you're fair on that point.
Which I also do think in like that high school fight, everyone should have put it together, and it does bother me.
Yeah,
and they should have figured it out. It's also something I let go because it happens in every not every superhero story. I think people are getting a little bit better about it, but like the Amazing Spider-Man movies are gonna do it too. Like Andrew Garfield's gonna break a sink with his bare hands, and no one's gonna think anything of it.
Forgot about that. Yeah. Or when like Logan sits down on the motorcycle and almost breaks the motorcycle because he's like 4,000 pounds.
Yeah, there's little things like that. But
that one's more subtle.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that one you're like, I get it, but he doesn't. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So there's it's a bit of a trope for a thing that happens that really should give it away, and just doesn't, and it's I don't know, a bad trope of comic book storytelling. But even if we assume that Connors has enough evidence that he should be putting this together, well, he was going to be the villain of the next movie. Maybe he does put it together and we just didn't get to see
Right.
that.
It's frustrating to see that like there's a lot of world building off camera that we're not really meant to know
Mm-hmm.
throughout these movies, and it sucks because like it was kind of filmed in that time frame, or at least
Oh,
filmed in that
Uncle
direction.
Ben's new killer being someone who like blatantly wasn't there in the first
Yeah,
movie, and we just have to accept that like this
yeah.
newly introduced character is vital to
Hmm.
Spider-Man's origin now,
Yeah, and
and
because the camera wasn't there for us to know that,
off-camera world building for us to just accept.
put together. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but in the world where this movie does have off-camera world building that they explain, Dr. Connors definitely found out that Peter Parker is Spider-Man. Like, just from this evidence alone, at least in my head, that works for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay.
um,
I yeah, but so with all of these characters being introduced at the same time and kind of having their own flaws and plot holes and things just not being fleshed out enough, it's all a matter of them trying to do too much in one movie, and this movie is
mm,
now notorious for that. Um a later movie. I don't know if you've seen like I don't know what Spider-Man movies you've seen. You don't watch every comic book movie like I do.
the only Spider-Man movie I haven't, or Spider-Man movies I haven't seen, are Spider-Verse and Far From Home.
Okay, so you probably already know spoilers for a future episode. Not really. Everyone knows this, but The Amazing Spider-Man 2 is going to do the same thing. It's going to screw up by having too many villains in it that they just don't figure out. And so now we've seen the Spider-Man movies do it twice and kill off
Yeah.
that version of the franchise both times. And so now, because that's
Mm,
happened, people kind of transfer that knowledge to other comic book movies where it's not super fair. Because, like, now that Spider-Man, the next Marvel slash Sony Spider-Man entry that I'm going to refer to as Spider-Man 3 because we don't have a title yet, with that being rumored to have so many characters and villains, I
mm.
saw a lot of immediate reaction that was like, haven't you guys learned this lesson about needing to juggle so much? To which I
Yeah.
point out, Marvel pulled off Infinity War and Endgame. I'm not going to
But there was
question how many
also,
characters they can put in a movie and make it work.
but keep in mind, all those characters, except for a few, had their own movies explaining their powers and abilities, and they all had one universal villain versus, okay, it's like you have 10 good guys and
Mm-hmm.
like two bad guys, right?
Mm-hmm.
In this movie, you have one bad guy or one good guy,
Mm-hmm.
and including Eddie Brock, four bad guys.
Mm-hmm.
You see what I mean? That's a lot to juggle for
So
just one actor. You know what I mean?
I,
Or one character.
but Infinity War and Endgame, more so Infinity
Hmm.
War. These aren't words anymore.
Infinity scores.
They're still they do have an advantage from characters already being introduced in
Hmm.
advance, unlike this movie and The Amazing Spider-Man 2. But Spider-Man 3 is going to have that advantage too. Because our
Okay, yeah,
heroes,
now, right,
yeah,
right.
because our heroes are going to be several versions of Peter Parker we've already seen. Maybe they'll
Hmm.
squeeze a Miles in there. That'd be cool.
That would be sweet.
We really have no idea. Spider-Verse juggles entirely new Spider-Man because it's the first of a franchise of Spider-Man movies. It introduces a bunch of them, but only makes a couple of them important. I think that's a detail a lot of people kind of miss, is that having this many characters doesn't mean they try to make them all important. Endgame, I don't know, there might be 40 superheroes in it. I don't know, I've never counted, but there are tens of them.
Right.
There might be 5 that are important.
That's valid. I mean, I'll give you that, but um it also makes it easier that a lot of the superheroes that are in like Endgame
Mm-hmm.
have their backstories established either through connections from other movies or
Mm-hmm.
having their own movies.
Yeah. Yeah, and so with Endgame having Infinity War and Endgame, with them having advantages that helped it work better, juggling that many characters. And mind you, we're talking about exponentially more characters. We're not talking about movies that pulled off, oh, there's 3 villains in it. We're talking about movies that pulled off, here's 50 named characters that
Mhm.
all go into these fights. Uh, Keeping that in mind, again, this new Spider-Man's going to have that advantage too. This one screwed up because it didn't have it. I guess it kind of sort of had it with New Goblin. The Amazing Spider-Man 2 had to kind of set up too many at once, but this
Yeah,
next
yeah,
one,
okay.
it's going to be, as far as we know, I guess there's nothing stopping them from introducing new versions of Spider-Man and new villains entirely. But the new ones they introduce don't have to be important. It could be that the returning Spider-Man 2 Doc Ock is the only important villain, or there could be 3 or 4 important villains, but they're all villains we've seen already. So
Okay.
there
Okay.
are approaches that could make it work and approaches that could make it not work. And yeah, we've definitely seen people screw it up, but it's weird to me to see people take it as a given for the next Spider-Man movie when Marvel themselves have already pulled it off over and over again.
Yeah. Okay. I'll give you that. I'll give you that.
And even Sony managed once with Spider-Verse.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm pulling my phone out because I had a couple of nitpicks that I wanted to refresh myself on because I have just like two or three. Do we want to talk about anything moving forward from this, like visuals or?
Yeah, let's do visuals. It's fine. I don't know. They pull it off. There's
Um,
nothing that jumps out at me as like, it's all dated, yeah. But Sandman is
Sandman's
done really
introduction.
well
I was
frequently.
just gonna say, yeah, he's done really well, like in any scene he's in. At first, when I first seen like the demolecularization whatever,
Mhm.
and you see like these really weird looking rocks, and I'm like,
Mhm.
oh no, is this gonna look bad?
Mhm.
It actually ends up looking pretty decent. His
Yeah.
whole scene of realizing who he is, or
I
what he
will
is rather.
say this is more of a stylistic thing than an actual technical skill thing, but I don't
Hmm.
like the shape of his body when they form his body out of sand at any given time, not a particular scene.
Hmm.
I don't like the weird like inhuman kind of shape to it where it just kind of looks like a bad like game model.
Humanoid versus human.
Yeah, he
Hmm.
has like a head that's shaped like a PS1 character, and it's a stylistic thing, not a
Hmm.
technical skill thing, because the sand itself looks really good
Yeah.
pretty consistently. I mean, there's exceptions for a shot here, a shot there. Um,
Hmm.
Even in that scene, his kind of origin scene, I really enjoyed noticing a shot where when he finds his little like pendant or locket or whatever, when he sees it and reaches out to grab it,
And he can't.
it's actually sitting in real sand. And then his CG sand hand reaches out and grabs it and pulls it closer.
I'm very sorry. I'm sure you heard that noise. That was my grandmother calling me two times in a row. Uh,
For all of the internet content we have ever
yeah.
discussed, no
Sorry.
one has ever heard anything you thought they heard.
Well, my phone's like attached to the desk. My desk is attached to my microphone, kind of thing, or my microphone's
Mhm.
attached to my desk. Vibrations and all that. Sorry. I just know I was giving weird looks too. That's the other
Mhm.
thing that's different from this show is like you can see me going like what.
Mhm.
Um, but so the locket thing. I don't know if you caught this, but like it was also kind of him like reforming his shape too.
Mhm.
Because when he first reaches out to the locket, his hand's just a giant mitten.
Yeah.
And then like he tries it again and actually has fingers this time. And like
Mhm.
so like that first scene like makes total sense why like he looks not quite right.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's
Mm-hmm.
more extreme in that shot, but they kind of keep doing it throughout though at any given
Yeah.
time. Not to that extreme to where his hands don't have fingers, but I just think his shape consistently looks really odd. And again, I think it was a stylistic thing, not a technical skill thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's whatever. Ultimately, it was mostly done well. I have minor complaints, but 2007 Sand has got to be really hard to do. Not that I know anything about special effects work. So
Right, but either
that
way,
was
like
done
they did
well. I think
fantastic
the
work on him.
Venom, yeah, I think the Venom effects are done well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Uh,
Uh,
Green screen New Goblin versus Spider-Man fights are kind of hit or miss. I usually like the
yeah,
choreography of it, but the green screening is sometimes awkward. It's real ambitious to be doing Spider-Man in, the years of 2002 to 2007.
yeah, that's true. I do have to say though, the choreography of it all, despite the technical difficulties or
Mhm.
technical challenges that they had to overcome, the choreography was all really good.
Mhm.
I mean, like the final fight, like aside from all the BS story, um, I really like the end fight scene. Like it's actually pretty good. you know,
Yeah, and
the teamwork fighting was awesome. I think personally,
yeah, and I think they kind of wanted it to be like
we're
that
sorry, but here you go. Here's a good fight.
like this is prior to MCU, prior to Avengers, but I
hmm
think with the idea of like making New Goblin fight on Peter's side there, which I don't think is warranted character-wise, like story-wise. I don't think they actually
Yeah,
managed to get there,
yeah,
but having like the closest thing to a team up that you can
yeah.
really have here for the ending is kind of cool. Like it's not Avengers per se, but it was kind of cool to see two good guys. Harry's not a good guy, but to
Yeah.
see Spider-Man and another person fighting two villains at the same time, it was a pretty cool idea. Um,
Yeah. I was not happy how they killed Harry. Uh, what's like
mhm.
I'm waiting for like his unborn son to realize that Spider-Man may have killed my father. I have to kill Spider-Man. And then the butler's gonna be like, "Listen, I did this for your dad and his and your grandpa. Like,
Yeah.
I hid this information from you until it was a really pivotal point." Um,
With that said, I don't. Well, you said you had some nitpicks. I think I'm out of things to talk about, but
it's mostly dumb things that I noticed
mhm.
that I thought were kind of funny. For one of them was, how did Harry get the train with all of his new stuff without Spider-Man noticing? Like, how did he
how
get to
did
test any of the
Harry?
gear or weapons?
How did Harry turn himself into New Goblin? Because we saw him get back into the chamber that did it before.
Oh
That
yeah,
chamber should not have still existed.
yeah, good point.
That shouldn't have been there anymore. And even if it did, it should have required like even if it was still there, it should have required two people to operate.
And not to mention, the other thing too is that when Green Goblin went nuts, he had the super serum, the super Seagrams.
Their psychological effects are different.
Yeah, like Green Goblin went insane, and Harry went insane on his own,
Harry
and
Harry
then found the
sprouted a
secret lab
Harry like sprouted a second personality that like
without the serum. That's the big takeaway.
well no because Harry no maybe you missed it. Harry did go back into the chamber that made Green Goblin. We see him step out of the
Right.
gas.
No, I know. But what
What?
I'm getting at is he found it because he heard his dad talking to him. He got mad
Mm.
and threw a knife at the mirror.
Oh,
He
okay.
hadn't had any of
Oh,
the
so
super
he's
serum.
so he's already kind of crazy before
He's
he does it.
already crazy. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, I see what you
Yeah.
mean. So yeah, that chamber shouldn't have existed anymore because people know that Harry was Green Goblin. Or at least I've been
hmm
assuming that. They really should. There was no implication
Yeah, there was no
that
hiding his
Peter
face.
that like Peter manipulated the evidence in such a way that there was no connection. I don't know, maybe he did, and that explains some plot holes. They didn't tell us that if he did.
Maybe.
But
Um
but that shouldn't have existed anymore. He shouldn't have been able to run it on his own. And then when he did, the psychological effects were different
yeah.
because he was like literally like it was like two identities completely, but like his regular identity didn't know the crazy one was there, and that's not what happened with
Right.
Norman.
Yeah. No, Norman knew the crazy side was there.
Norman kind of
And not
had
to
like a
mention,
crazy voice in his head that talked to him and slowly
Harry
took
also got
over,
the
but
Harry also got the crazy Norman voice and not his own crazy Harry voice. I don't know if you caught that. Um I had a couple other ones, like most of them were in the beginning. Like the meteorite with the symbiote crashing down from space,
Mhm.
not even like 500 feet away from Peter's bike, and he wasn't even 500 feet away from the bike. How did he not hear the meteor land?
I
Like,
thought you meant like
there's
what
no
is the
way.
coincidence that it landed near Spider-Man, and I was gonna say that's just a
Hollywood
given of
magic.
comic book storytelling. That's
Yeah.
something we just have to let go, or else
Yeah,
the
that's
story can't
fine.
happen.
But what's upsetting to me is that meteorite damn sure made noise and he did not hear it. And also in the same scene, he's still riding that shitty bike and he's trying to buy a wedding ring instead of a car or a better bike. you
I
know
like
what I
him like
mean?
leaving the super fancy restaurant and then going back to his like shitty dilapidated apartment.
Right. Um or just I had one other nitpick that I
Not
noticed
that I
that just
believe
drove me
that
nuts.
like poor people should never have a good day, but
Mm,
but it was something. I've never ate at a restaurant like that.
me either, dude. Especially with Bruce Campbell being your waiter. Um, but and the last one was when he was talking to Aunt May when she gives him the ring.
Mm-hmm.
When she's making tea, if you pay attention, her process to make tea cracked me up more than anything
I didn't
else.
notice.
She made the tea in the kettle.
Mm-hmm.
She poured the water of the kettle into another kettle
Okay.
and then grabbed that kettle, which was a ceramic kettle, like a
Uh-huh.
serving dish, and poured this tea into the cups. And if you look at the liquid inside of this kettle,
Mm-hmm.
it is still water. Okay, it is still water when she's pouring the tea.
Yeah.
No tea was ever introduced because this is all in one shot.
Mm-hmm.
And then she just grabs milk and starts pouring it into this boiling ass water in the cups, and it's just milk with like curdled milk or water with curdled milk in it at this point because of the temperature. There is no tea whatsoever. That was the biggest thing that drove me nuts. I'm like, how
Wow.
are you just gonna drink milk with water in it, like,
Mm-hmm.
or water with milk in it?
Yeah. No, I can't say I picked up on that one or that it made my my nitpicks list. Oh,
Just go back and watch that scene.
I guess if I have one
Like,
more tiny nitpick that just came to mind, not like a continuity error, not like a silly thing a character did, but if they were planning to try to tie this movie back to Uncle Ben in a way, other than just like it being ludicrous to expect us to like believe and accept that take on like the changes they're making here, uh, they also should have made his influence on Peter a bit more significant in Spider-Man 2. Because
okay.
I'm sure it's there a little bit, and I'm just not remembering it offhand. But they knew a little bit of what they were doing here. They've been slowly building things, and if they
Mhm.
thought they were gonna go there, they should have made the first one a bit more consistent with what's going on here. But Ben also should have been more significant throughout. I feel like he's a big deal in the first movie, and he's a big deal here. And I don't remember them making a big deal out of him in the second one.
Okay.
Granted, he's
Mhm.
dead. You have to get creative, but I don't even mean like really like having significant flashbacks with him. I mean that like Spider-Man's like morals and lessons and like not that the story needed to tie into him, but that we needed to hear Peter talk about him frequently. Like part of his
Yeah, yeah,
struggle
I'll
should
give you
have
that.
been not living up to what Uncle Ben wanted him to be. Just
Well, he shared his
something in there to
regrets in
remind us he's
Spider-Man 2.
important. What's that?
He shared his regrets in Spider-Man 2
That's what I'm saying is
because
I think
he
it's
blames
there,
himself
but
for Uncle Ben's death because when Uncle Ben drove him to the library, he admits to Aunt May that he didn't go to the library. He went to go
Mhm.
try and get money for a car. Dude got
Mhm.
robbed and he let him go.
Yeah.
He said he could have stopped him, but he let him go, and that's how Uncle Ben died.
Hmm.
So like he does still sort of tie back to the incident with the guilt, and it sort of made because like um at some point in the movie she talks to him about it and she says, it was very brave of you telling me the truth,
Hmm.
and your Uncle Ben had like a great sense of justice and self-sacrifice for
Hmm.
the needs of the many versus the needs of the few sort of
Yeah.
situation. So like they did bring Uncle Ben back in a way.
Hmm.
um I don't think they brought him back as strongly in this movie, except for strictly understanding that revenge is bad.
I'm saying that Spider-Man 2, knowing that this movie was going there,
Hmm.
even if Uncle Ben was in there a little bit, I'm just saying it should have been more significant into so that he's still a bit more important here. Like, it's not like I don't believe that he's important. We saw Spider-Man 1, but
Hmm.
I think they shouldn't have like dropped it and came back to it later without keeping it a bit more continuous and steady. I don't
Okay.
like
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
I
I see.
don't
I see what you
buy
mean.
that in the 5 years Peter has had like no psychological recovery at all over what happened.
I mean, if
Again,
you're
I'm
saying that
nitpicking.
he
I
didn't
know I
have
am.
any psychological recovery, he really kind of didn't. Like the rage that he had, like the acting with like that Spider-Man scene, where he's fighting Sandman in the sewer or subway
Mhm.
or whatever that
Yeah.
is.
Yeah, but
Like
but again,
when
I'm
he's
talking
yelling
about
at
2
Sandman.
though, and I'm talking about two's
Oh, you're talking
ramifications
about
on here.
2 versus 3.
He didn't
Gotcha. Okay.
have
Sorry,
like
I misheard.
he didn't have any psychological recovery. That's what this movie wants us to think. But I don't
Hmm.
believe this movie when it tells us because it should have been more significant and important in 2. Like on the way here, it should have kept being more of a factor. So it's
Okay.
not
Yeah.
that this
Yeah,
movie
you're right.
screwed it up. It's that if they knew they were going here, maybe 2 should have prepared it a little bit better.
That's valid. Oh
Yeah.
yeah, I agree with that. Sorry, I don't know why I didn't hear you say specifically 2, and I'm like, nah, man, you got to listen here. Like I'm defending this movie now. Um, it has its highs and lows, but there's more lows than highs in the third movie. I mean,
Um, Peter Darker is offensively bad.
and Dalton Munnell is offensively bad because he stole my joke. I'm so glad that you thought that was funny.
and and again, yeah, technically finish it if you already watched the first 2, and but it's not a strong recommend. Still, we didn't try to
No,
change each other's
watch
minds.
it.
We still agree
Watch it for yeah. Watch it
it's
for
a bad
closure.
movie. You could watch it for the memes.
My favorite meme is the whole dancing scene that somebody made without the audio there, without the music, when he goes and gets his suit. That's my
Hmm.
favorite shit. Oh man, it's so good.
All right.
Well,
Well,
yeah, I think I'm done.
thanks for listening to a strong recommend, and hopefully you enjoyed it. And we'll see you next time with the Amazing
Yeah.
Spider-Man.
Ring the
Oh
church
God, I
bell to
just
get
realized we
Venom.
need to watch Venom.
Ring the church bell to get Venom.
I've purposefully avoided Venom. Now I have to. Sorry, next time
Yeah.
with The Amazing Spider-Man. Thanks for watching.
Yeah.
Listening?
Later.
Watching. Get out.
Bye.